Either late last Sunday night or early Monday morning, I was in a dream. I was in a space, and there were a bunch of figures around. And at some point, some of the figures stood up and went to another particular place in the space, and I joined them because I recognized them as fellow members of the Camerata Singers. And I guess we presented a program or sang something. And at the end of it, I was walking back, and I saw my friend Ed Moncrief, and I was going up to him to say hello, and the space just kind of disappeared. And I found myself in another space that wasn't that space, and it wasn't my bedroom. It was a very odd space. I expected to hear Rod Serling say, "Welcome to the Twilight Zone." It was kind of a Twilight Zone experience there. But another voice came to me, and it was Jean-Luc Picard, who said, "Engage. Engage." Now, I don't know if I engaged or not, but I just drifted back into my bedroom, and I guess I looked around, and I said, "Oh, yesterday was Sunday, today is Monday, and Monday, okay," and I kind of got oriented to where I was. But the word engage stayed with me. And I've had the word engage in my mind all week. And as I went to look at the lessons for today, the three that we just heard, they all deal with engagement or being engaged. Engaging another person or engaging another group. So I invite you to join me for the next few minutes and look at these lessons in terms of engagement and what they're telling us about how we engage with issues or engage with one another. Now, the second Kings was Elijah and Elisa. It's hard to say those two names together. Elijah, Elisa. Elijah was the professional prophet. He'd been doing the job a long time. Elisha was anointed to come and be his helper and initially take over his job. And after they had been together for some time, Elijah knew that it was time to get in the chariot and go home to that next place, home, heaven, that next experience that all of us will face. And so he said to Elisa, "I'm going down there, you stay here." Elisa said, "No, I'm going with you. I'm not leaving your side. I'm not ready for you to leave yet." And other folks came as well. And so they went down to the water, and the chariot comes, and Elijah gets on the chariot, and he is out of there, goes up into the heavens. Elisa, meanwhile, is saying, "Father, Father, Father." And once Elijah's gone, Elisa grabs his mantle and wants to hold on and stay engaged. But they're not engaged anymore, or at least they're engaged in a different way. Now, Kathy and I have a dear friend named Julie. Julie was diagnosed with cancer many years ago, and it went into remission until 2 months ago when it came back, and it came back with a vengeance and entered her upper body. 3 weeks ago, Julie said, "I see the chariot coming. The chariot's coming." And that time she said, "And I have my wife and my daughter and my best friend, and they're going to follow me to the water." And my task was to send emails out to other friends of her to say, if you want to get a hold of Julie, you can email, you can send a card, no text, no phone, no visits, nothing else. She had chosen the folks that she wanted to be engaged with as she went to the chariot. Last Friday afternoon, Julie got on the chariot, and the rest of us who were watching her go in one way or the other. We started telling, we tried to pick up our mantle. We told stories about Julie over the last 40 years that we've been together in one place or another. And that's what we do. All of you have been in that situation. Someone you love gets on their chariot and goes, and here you are. That was Elijah and Elisa. It's about engagement. It's about disengagement. But even in the disengagement, there is some engagement that endures, even if it's in a different sense. Luke's gospel, prior to what we heard this morning, the disciples were with Jesus and for a couple of years up in Galilee. The Transfiguration happens. At the end of the Transfiguration, Jesus aligns himself to go to Jerusalem. And he tells his disciples, we are going to Jerusalem. And what that meant to the disciples was, we're going to go to Jerusalem, we're going to confront the Romans, and we're going to confront the Jewish authorities. That's our plan. We're going to Jerusalem. And so these young disciples, they're ready to go. They're going to Jerusalem. And so they sent out teams to scout ahead, to prepare the way for Jesus to come. They got to this Samaritan village. Now, the Samaritans, centuries before, were part of Israel. During the reign of Saul and David and Solomon, there was all one nation. The northern part of the nation, the southern part of the nation, they were all the nation of Israel. But after Solomon left the throne, there was no clear person who was going to take over. There wasn't a Samuel there to anoint someone to say, that's your next king. So there was political strife and social strife, and all kinds of strife going on. Finally, there was a king in the north and a king in the south, and they were in the... Finally, there was a civil war, and the nation divided into the northern kingdom, which was called Israel, and the southern kingdom, which was called Judah. Now, the folks in the southern kingdom had the temple. That was Jerusalem. And that was the holy place. And those folks up the north, that land of Samaria, those are apostates. They're apostates because they can't come to where we are. So they're doing everything wrong. They're not just poor country cousins. They're the bad guys. And so this is centuries old relationship. So when the disciples come in to this village, they expect hospitality. They expect people to say, come on, have a meal, have a place to rest, here's a tent, what can we do for you? But when the disciples said, we're going to Jerusalem, the Samaritans said, not on our dime. We're not going to engage with you. There's nothing you can tell us that's going to make us engage with you. And so these disciples, who are all riled up and ready to do their job, when Jesus comes, they say, it's time for fire and brimstone on these folks. We're going to wipe these Samaritans out because they're not listening to us. And Jesus says, step back, guys. We're not going to do any fire and brimstone stuff. If they won't engage with us, we'll just go to another village. In another place, Jesus said, if they don't engage with you, just put the dust off your feet and go to the next village. Now, I think what Luke is, because it's a strange little story there, but I think one of the things that Luke is saying is, if folks don't engage with you, let them go. And it also opens the door for the Samaritans in the future. So maybe after whatever happens in Jerusalem, the Samaritans say, hey, that Jesus might be our guy. But with the brimstone and all, that's not going to happen. So there's a door open there. So what to say about us when we try to engage people and they don't want to be engaged? If we have a message to proclaim that the people we talk to either won't buy or won't engage with, well, go to another person. Go to another village. Don't lose sleep over it. I think that's what Luke is trying to say. Now, we've all been in this COVID disaster now for 2.5 years. And just after our bishop was consecrated, I got a call from Brian Nordwick. And Brian asked me, the St. Jude's in Cupertino will call a rector in about 4 months. But in the interim, the bishop's looking for 3 people to go and be there to keep the place running. And the bishop would like you to go to St. Jude's in Cupertino for Sunday and another day in the week. And then the other 2 will go there as well. And I said, well, I took an oath to the bishop 45 years ago yesterday that I would, do what the bishop said. So I said, okay, well, let me call the senior warden. So I called the senior warden at St. Jude's in Cupertino. And we talked, and yeah, I could do that. I felt, yeah, what they're asking, I can do. But I've lived on the Monterey Peninsula now for 22 years. And St. Jude's Cupertino is a long, long, long way away. On Sunday mornings, maybe an hour and 45 minutes. But during the week, when we lived in Fremont, folks said, don't you just hate the traffic around here? And I said, what traffic? And now I go back to Fremont and say, I don't hate the traffic around here. So it'll be 2.5 hours up, 2.5 hours back during the week. Sunday, hour and a half up, 2.5 hours back. So I'd be in the car for 10 hours a week. And I was ready to say to the senior warden, well, I'm sorry, but the drive, I just can't do it. It's not feasible. So I was going to call her on a Friday morning and tell her that thank you very much, but no thanks. She called me first because the governor had said, shelter in place. And she called me and said, well, if you're concerned about driving here, you don't have to because you can't come. But we'd still like you to come. We've got Zoom. So Penelope Duckworth, who's over at All Saints in Carmel today doing supply for Amber, and I and another priest from Diocese of California, we were the 3 clergy for St. Jude's Cupertino for 4 months, totally on Zoom. And one of the priests I have never met in person, except on Zoom. And we did Sunday services, we did Bible studies, I did pastoral calls, did everything you want. I did home communions on Zoom because I knew a senior warden in Morgan Hill who had the sacrament in her church, and she brought it to the person in Morgan Hill that went to St. Jude's and left it at his front door, and then he went and got it, and we did home communion. Now, the interesting thing about this COVID deal is that we had rules of engagement with COVID, didn't we? We were told, wear masks, wash your hands, and stay 6 feet apart from folks. And we did that. We followed those rules, and we had rules to engage COVID. And we have rules to engage, what should we do? Name came out. Not Yahoo. That deal that we use to communicate with folks. Zoom. That's it. I was going through the alphabet. I didn't get all the way to Z. So we had rules of engagement for Zoom, and the rules of engagement for Zoom is keep yourself muted, use the chat, and if you want to speak, put up the hand icon. So we had these clear rules of engagement. Now we, in the last few years, particularly recently, we've been asked to engage in all kinds of other critical issues in our country and in our society. We've been talking about climate change for years, and we're trying to do something about climate change. We're trying to engage the issues. The gun violence in our country. Our granddaughter graduated from Syracuse University the weekend that the shooting took place in Buffalo. Buffalo's only an hour away from Syracuse, and we had that going on, and it was mentioned at her graduation. And now we have the Supreme Court out there and engaging in the issues that there's lots of engagement. And it's difficult to engage. Because if we have folks that they're in another place and won't engage with what we're engaging, it can lead to all kinds of problems. So St. Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, I would submit, is offering rules of engagement for the various issues in which we are engaged. It's like we had rules of engagement for Zoom and COVID. This gives us rules of engagement for the other issues that come before us. So if you think of rules of engagement as a path, and you're trying to come and engage these issues, what are the signs along the path that will help you keep your sanity and have some sense of dignity? So on the one side, you have the works of the flesh. I've always been not too pleased with the words of flesh, but the one side there that we're pulled to, the side that deals with idolatry, enmities, strife, jealousy, anger, quarrels, dissension, factions, envies. Sounds familiar on that side. On the other side, the rule of engagement with that is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We can be reminded of those things. What I'm going to do when I get home is I'm going to take this and I'm going to write each of those rules of engagement, one on the other. I'm going to write them on a piece of paper, and I'm going to put it on my refrigerator door. And that's going to remind me that this is the way that we can engage one another and have rules of engagement to get through this as followers of Jesus. Now, there's another story about Jesus, and the disciples are out on the Sea of Galilee, and a storm comes up, and there are waves and winds, and there's a lot of confusion, and a lot of fear, and all those things. And Jesus is in the back sleeping. So in the midst of engaging with all these issues, sometimes it's good just to stay in the boat and take a nap. Amen.